Hey, Sarah, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Whenever you are ready, we are set up and you are on our screen. So if you want to talk about Bookshare.
All right, yeah, fantastic. This was actually a really great segue getting to hear the last bits of the conversation that was just happening in that last segment. First, just a general introduction to Bookshare. So, Bookshare is a online digital collection, the world's largest online digital collection of accessible books. We have all sorts of books from textbooks to just regular novels, picture books, magazines, news articles, pretty extensive collection. Bookshare is primarily grant funded through the Department of Education Special Office of Special Education Programs. And we've been around for 20 years. With being grant funded, we are free to all students in the US. So most schools and other education settings do already have Bookshare accounts so that your students of any age are able to join into this resource and get books at their fingertips in accessible formats that they can better interact with. So we do have Braille output, so you can emboss that or use it on a refreshable brailer. We have our web reader that does highlighted. It actually does a lot of different kind of things you can do, but the main point we always bring up is it highlights from the words in the sentences, but you're able to alter visually how it looks by changing the margins, the word spacing, the line spacing, the font, the size. We know a lot of people will have preferences or will just need something different than what's there for it to process. And It's a really, really great resource. So I heard like on the AAC devices, so it is something, it is a app that you're able to put on there, or if your specific device has web access, you're able to access it on there. And what I always kind of think is nice about Bookshare, specifically when we're looking at like the speech and language kind of aspects of it, is a lot of what we get is it's in those interactions, right, that we have in our classrooms that are going to help us kind of expand our abilities, help in our learning comprehension. And when it's limited in a classroom, kind of what you have access to, that limits our learning, right? And so having a student have not just Bookshare, I mean, there's plenty of, yeah. Uh, so come back. And is building success on, have, and so being able to have that accessible for them on a tool that they're already learning and using to get that, equitable literacy experience is kind of what it's about, right? I don't know. Did people have questions? I kind of always feel like I could talk forever about how great it is at every age and every grade to have accessible, content and literacy, because it's important. It's a lifelong tool that a lot of, I would say maybe the general public always thinks, well, ebooks, it's so easy. Ebooks, it's great to drive and listen. And at the same time, but really, they don't really think about that deeper context. Of it's not just a what's easier or what's fun. It's neat, and it's what we're doing to help our students, our learners, our users of every age.
Sarah, we have one question here in person. They're going to get the microphone. If you have a hard time hearing them, I can repeat it.
Hi there. We have our daughter here who uses a Tobii Dynavox, and I have been frustrated for forever because she's only been on the All program and she's literally read those books hundreds of times. And so I'm so thrilled. We were just at the Wiseman Center and found out about you this week. So that's why we're here today. And so I'm just wondering, do you have eye gaze activated books that are like through, like starting with picture books and going to, middle readers and then on to novels and, all the things?
So yeah, it's not going to be the book itself that specifically has the coding and programming in it. The library, well, collection, we used to say library, but once you get the book, you always have access to it. Um, it our resource works with the device. So the eye gaze technology that's within the device, the book will activate and read with that. So when you're looking at the book open on the screen, so it has different navigation arrows and different settings that will help so that when you are going to change the page, it'll turn the page when you're indicating on that. And I actually was working with a teacher, a provider in a school district in Madison, trying to nail this down. So the provider was able to get the technology to work cohesively, but then their student was still having a little bit of difficulty with getting through the amount of pages that they want. So sometimes it is going to depend on what settings you have your book on in there. So we have one of the many options in that you're able to customize when you have the actual book open is if you want to have the pages in a scrolling fashion, so you have them just all back to back, or if you have it in like a pagiated, so turning each page. And that specifically seems to be kind of one setting that you have to have is to have it to where it's turning the page, because with scrolling, it's kind of an endless amount of information that it's going to be searching for, which then doesn't work efficiently with the eye gaze technology in the TD device. So sometimes also the margin sizes, because you can make the tiniest margins or largest margins, can also affect how it interacts with the device. But I will say on the bottom of the screen, my screen, hopefully you'll see my email address. I would encourage everybody here to take a quick shot about that, because when you get into specific use like that, my job is specifically working outreach throughout the US. So I'm always available when you're doing that kind of troubleshooting. I'm pretty quick to respond for questions like this. But yeah, Bookshare is one that proudly we work to make sure that our users have equitable and above adequate, right? We want you to have exceptional access to the books in our collection through any technology that you're using to access them.
Thank you. I have a follow-up question. Is there a dictation function essentially where the book could be up and going on the Tobii and then be able to activate something with their eyes and then start or pause dictation of the words as it would go along the screen?
Just to clarify, because I'm not sure if I quite understood, like it in a note-taking sense.
So, if there's a book that's open, would she be able to activate the computer to essentially read the book and highlight the sentence as it's coming along, and then the computer actually dictating verbally to her the book, like a read-along, basically?
Yeah, yes. So inside the book reader, so we have the text to speech. So it will, it puts out the digitally generated voices, which are device dependent. So it does start the text to speech. There's a little play button on the bottom of the screen, and you can play and pause with that eye gaze to just start and stop and start the book. it highlights the sentence, and then there's also word highlighting. So you have your sentence highlighted, and then the word highlights throughout the sentence. It has a bookmark function. You, wherever you stop reading that book, when you open it up again, it's in that same spot that you stopped. And you're able to change the speed of the speed of the reading. You can slow it down or speed it up. You can change the different colors of the sentence highlighting and the word highlighting. You can change the colors of the text. You can change the colors of the background, which is helpful with catching that attention or some of that visual processing, especially if it's a CVI. So you can do those extreme contrasts with your highlighting and helping with all that tracking. Mm-hmm.
Does Bookshare have texts that are part of district purchase curricula? Maybe not trade books per se.
So yes, basically yes. So what Bookshare, so how Bookshare operates is we work under copyright law, under the Chafee Amendment. So we work directly mostly with the publishers who will give us any of their books. We have partnership agreements with them. So we're getting a lot of textbooks. We're getting a lot of school bought curriculum. Also, if we don't have the book directly from the publisher, we work with the NIMAC library, the congressional, I can't remember what it is, sorry. But we work with the NIMAC library, and so they also freely give us all of their copyrighted materials. So we will have, we can never say we'll have all of the curriculums that schools are using, but we have a lot of them. We'll even have workbooks, depending on what's been requested and what we have. With Bookshare, when we're looking at it through the organizational accounts, so that's the ones through your schools or your therapy providers, anything that's under that education and student kind of learning, like the center would be under that. So any organization that's providing that learning experience. So we have books in our collection that are open source that literally anybody can utilize Bookshare as a student to get these. We think we have 10,000 and counting in our open source collection. And then the other 1.4 million books that we have in this collection are given to us by publishers, but then the NIMAC books are restricted to individuals who have IEPs. But that's even just a smaller percent compared to what we have from the publishers. And we have a lot of the same books that are in that NIMAC. So one thing is like your students don't need to have an IEP to access this collection. There just needs to be an identified need of the inability to interact with a standard typical book, print book, which we know that's so many of us. It's even myself. So I have severe dyslexia, and you can give me a book, but it's going to take me 10 times longer to get through that one condensed black and white page. But we do have, especially when teachers are looking at this, a lot of the paid curriculum books that they have out there in these accessible formats for their students, and even the teachers, if they have their own print disability, are able to access this library. I hope that answered your question.
One question just for what you just were talking about. Does this expand to 504 plans? Does this service expand beyond IEPs into 504 plans?
It does in in that when we're looking at the educational sense. So because we work under copyright laws, we don't work in education law, even though we're providing the educational texts. Even the IEP is not required. And typically, if you have a book that if you have a need for a book that we don't have in our collection that you're able to access, say you don't have the IEP, but you need this book for your learning journey, you can request it and then we get access from it from the NIMAC library, and then it becomes available to everyone in our system. So students who have, yes, it's open for students with a 504 and an IEP, but neither of those are required to utilize Bookshare. I do know that some states all the states have different requirements in their education system on when and what they're willing and able to make accommodations around. So I know some states are very particular about you get accommodations when you have an IEP and nothing outside of that. And because Bookshare is used not just in the US, we're actually used internationally as well. That we know that those restrictions differ state to state. And we also know that those kind of restrictions are a serious barrier. So we on our side do not have those strict requirements of you have to have a diagnosis, you have to have an IEP, you have to have a 504. We put the liability in the teacher's hands, the educators, the therapists, the resource provider. If they see a need, and same even with the parents. So we do also have individual accounts that I will say are much easier to set up once you have an organization account, because they do ask the verification of that the majority of our users will fall under the provider. So I know, I also used to be a teacher of the visually impaired for 6 years. And so that's where I have a lot of experience with Bookshare in the VI field. And we know that VIs, just like learning disabilities or physical disabilities, don't have 1, 10, or 100 diagnoses. They have thousands under them. So we also don't rest on that to have that use qualifier, right? Because that's another barrier. So something that's really, I think, an advantage for Bookshare is that if you see the qualified need, you're able to say, sign up and use this. There's no restricting time of day, amount of use. One thing that I get asked often from educators is, well, if it's so open, right? Well, if anybody can use it, aren't people going to cheat? Are people going to try to use this instead of reading a book? And I'll tell you what, like, we have to trust ourselves and we have to trust our students. And when I say students, I will say that's of any age. We have like our birth to 3, we have our seniors. I will be a lifelong student, but we have to trust them and see what works for them. So when asked, like, if you put a digital book that's going to read to you in front of someone, does that count as cheating? And no, like, not at all, because it either really works for the student and it helps them and it benefits them and they're able to thrive and succeed, or it's a waste of their time and they're not going to interact with it. So I always try to, like, very much put it out there that this tool is for everyone. And something that I heard in one of the previous conversations is the behavioral, right? The behaviors, I wrote it down. Behavior is communication. So one thing that I encounter a lot in the schools that I work with is there's those students who have fallen through the cracks for years. Classrooms are large. There's not everyone gets that intensive need that they deserve. And so we'll get a student in middle school or high school who has tried their best to be a reader, but they need that support to be able to process what they're looking at. And so there'll be those students who act out, who are always in trouble, that teachers don't want to give their time to anymore. And really it's because they just didn't understand, they couldn't process, they couldn't intake the information that was being delivered to them through their typical materials in their classroom. And as soon as you give them highlighted or like highlighted text or text to speech, suddenly their comprehension just skyrockets and they're able to then be the successful, person that they always had the potential to be. So knowing all of those things is another reason that this is not restricted in the qualification of an IEP or 504. If there is an identified need, if there's even a thought that this could be beneficial, and you try out these accessible texts or the web reader or however you choose to customize the functions in there, and the student is suddenly thriving, it's not because it was suddenly easier, it's because it was suddenly accessible. They were finally able to access that information that they were given.
Yes, thank you, Sarah. This is so important. And I think thinking about communication beyond just this formal practice that we're trying to teach people how to use a system, and actually having motivating, meaningful activities like literacy is really something we were hoping to drive home today. And we are really appreciative of your time today, Sarah, and sharing this wonderful resource with our community here in Wisconsin and across the country. And I believe we can have contact information for your company available to you, so folks that are here today can set up their own Bookshare account. And Becca and I have decided we might want to explore that organizational account thing, but that'll be another conversation. I think we are going to let you sign off from us. You're welcome to stay and hear from our panelists. I'm going to get out of the way because Becca actually has an introduction, but thank you so much, Sarah.
Thank you. Yep. Thank you.